Alicia here from GrowthMatch, and today we're hearing from Daniel about how early stage tech startups can create repeatable, predictable, and scalable growth engines. Let's go ahead and start with a brief introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you specialize in?
Hi, nice to be here. I'm Daniel. I run We Scale Startups, which is a growth marketing agency for early stage tech. So I basically work with early stage apps, SaaS, e-com, and crypto companies to help them scale. Usually they've reached product market fit and they come to me and they say, we're here, but we want to get to here. How do we do that? And I break that down. I look at the processes, who their customer is, and then sort of like reassemble a plan. And then we work towards achieving those goals.
Great, thanks, Daniel. And what's your experience so far working in this space?
Well, that's a fun question. I never really said I wanted to be a marketer. I love creating stuff. When I was younger at school, I created a bunch of startups, most of which completely crashed and failed. One managed to succeed and I had an exit, but I was like, what do I do with myself? I'm 18, with no academic qualifications. And I realized I want to do more of this. I want to create more companies. But for me, the difficult bit wasn't creating the startup. It was, or not coming up with the idea. It was, how do I get people at scale to use this? And, I didn't really want to go to uni and study marketing. So I decided to sort of join startups and like brute force my learnings, which is what I did, starting in the most junior roles at awful companies and working up to head of marketing for a few Series B, Series C companies. And then I became a freelancer and then basically just became really busy, started growing my like freelancer group, and started an agency. And that's kind of what I do. And then outside that, I also do lectures and guest talks. I like sort of applying context at university to academic theory, and mentor with organizations like Google on their accelerator program in Techstars. So very wordy, but I hope that helps answer your question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And when you're working with people on these things, what do you see as the most common mistake they're making? And how do you see that being avoided?
Oh man, there's so many mistakes. So I've made all the same mistakes that a lot of my clients have, but I also see the same mistakes being made again and again. I think the number one is ego, and that's not paying attention to the data. That's sort of having an idea of who you want your company to be, or your customer to be, and then sort of selection biasing data to fit that theory. And unfortunately, it's been the result of the failure of a bunch of companies I've worked with, because I've had this, as a CEO generally has had this idea in the head of like what they want their business to be, but then that might not actually represent what people want. So that's one. The second is not paying enough attention to their customer. I think there is a direct correlation in my experience to the relationship between how well the CEO and the company deeply understands the customer, the jobs to be done, and how successful that company is. And the third is a bit of a specific one, but it's messaging. It's how do you articulate your value proposition in a way that makes sense to your customer, which I guess ties into the understanding your customer. But I think that really affects everything you do, like how you speak to your customer, every platform, every blog article, social media post, all that kind of stuff. And if you don't have that spot on, then you're creating inefficiencies. So it's kind of those things that pop to mind. Spend a lot of time talking about those things.
Yeah, it's so important to get those things right. And when you're starting to work with somebody on these, what kind of results do you achieve for them? And what is it about what you do specifically that gets them there?
So generally when I work with a client, we kind of have a conversation of like, we're here now and this is where we want to get to. And then I reverse engineer and say, okay, in order to do that, we need these resources. Some of those results have been spectacular. And I've had, some really great 100x growth with excellent companies that have achieved great product market fit, that have achieved some sort of viral campaign, like a game, a year ago. That was quite fun. And a bunch of stuff during lockdown, actually. And then, and then more moderate growth for other companies. But it's kind of difficult to say, to give a specific number. It's more a case of like, what I like to try and do is rather than claim to be, I'm going to, turn your company into something that's going to be stratospheric. What I can do is I can say, I know how to develop sustainable growth so that every client or customer that your company does get is going to be someone who loves your product, who is really engaged with your brand and wants to tell all their friends about you. It's not, I used to hate the term growth hacking. And I used to say it's actually what I do is slow, boring growth. But it's not really slow and it's not boring. But it is that sort of like, what's the most efficient way to get the most value? And that might not be, I feel like I'm selling myself a bit short there, but my goal is generally to try and get really good value, and look at the data and identify like what is the optimum way we can achieve that.
Amazing. I actually love that approach. So if somebody is interested in working with you, how can they explore that?
Feel free to get in touch. I love talking about startups in general. Like I genuinely think that startups will solve most of the world's problems. The goal of a startup is to solve a problem. I want to work to contribute to that, to the community. So feel free to get in touch on pretty much any platform, or feel free to drop me an email, daniel@wescalestartups.com, or via GrowthMatch. And happy to have a conversation to answer any questions you might have. And then following that, we can see where it goes. But like, I'm not going to hard sell anyone. I love talking about startups, so anything I can do to help, always happy.
Love that. Thank you so much, Daniel, for chatting with me today. Again, if you are interested in connecting with Daniel, definitely go to growthmatch.com and schedule a discovery call with him. Thanks so much.
Cheers.